Good morning, Carol and Bhargav. I think we've got a very interesting week here in South Asia and East Asia. Whilst the Australian elections went against the polls, I think we can expect continuing stability in Australia. Obviously, it's got a very advanced government and separation of legal duties and a good security paradigm and fundamentally a low-risk environment. In Thailand, in Indonesia and India, though, perhaps it's not so clear-cut. Indonesia, Prabowo supporters, egged on by him during the campaign, are looking to demonstrate tomorrow and the next day, so the 21 and 22 of May. Thailand's wrangling to form a coalition of government, and India's just finally closing off on, I think it's stage 7, Bhargav, of the largest elections in the largest democracy in the world. Could you just start by giving us a quick tip-off on where do you think the elections are going to go, and what's the post-electoral economic and security ramifications of what looks like a continuing BNP government? Am I correct?
Yes. So yesterday they have completed 7th phase of the general elections this year. So before the election started, most of the pollsters, opinion polls, predicted that BJP, that is Bharatiya Janata Party government, headed by Prime Minister Modi, will be back in power, but with a reduced majority. They actually have a majority in the lower house with more than 280 seats. They require a minimum of 272 seats of 543 total number of elected seats in the lower house, or Lok Sabha as they call it. So after the 7th phase of the general elections, opinion polls, exit polls, have forecasted a higher majority. That means they predict that the BJP will come back to power with more than 280 seats, contrary to pre-election polls, which predicted much reduced majority. That means a greater reliance on an alliance rather than a single party majority. There isn't a major difference. It's just a matter of a technical difference between 270 seats and 280 seats. Even there, some of the polling agencies have predicted more than 300 seats for the BJP itself. So there's a very big gap between what the polling agencies have predicted. The gap is 30 to 40 seats. That may not seem like much, but given it's only 500 seats in the lower house, that does reflect a major gulf between the polling agencies. And in terms of security, there won't be a major, as I assess it, there won't be a major shift in security paradigm, except maybe in northern states of Jammu and Kashmir, where you may see a continued hardline policy by the BJP government. It has been tracked, or the numbers suggest the number of terror attacks under the BJP government has increased when compared to the UPA government for nearly 10 years, from 2004 to 2014, and 2014 onwards, the number of attacks have increased. So a continued risks in the northern state of Jammu and Kashmir can be expected after BJP comes into power.
And what about Kerala, Bhargav?
So Kerala is primarily a domestic situation. It isn't exactly a terror risk, though National Investigation Agency have been running a wider operation to track ISIS connections, but it's not directly related to the BJP or the CPIM government in the state. So the state itself is known to be the birthplace of communist movement in the subcontinent. So that's very important to note, because it has been the stronghold of the Communist Party of India, especially the northern districts of the Kerala state. And the Communist Party continues to be in control or in power, in fact, in alliance with Congress and other left-leaning parties. And that's where the conflict has risen in the recent years, where the BJP has tried to penetrate into the northern northern districts and the rural areas of Kerala. And as expected, the CPIM cadre has resisted such a move, and the BJP and its right-wing groups like RSS have used controversies related to temples to gain wider support in the state. Post-elections, I do not see a major change, except the BJP may expand its footprint in the northern districts, and more tensions may spread to southern districts as well. But though it's not very likely, the southern districts and the central districts, in fact, notably host the two biggest cities in Kerala, that is Kochi and Trivandrum. Trivandrum is the state capital. Now, these two cities are very important for southern economy because they receive probably some of the highest FDI FDI investments into Kerala and in the southern states, as well as foreign remittances from workers outside. So these two cities are unlikely to be affected with political tensions unless a major controversy like the temple controversy last year sparks off a statewide protest, which is very likely in the next pilgrimage season in the temple. The temple in question is Sabrimala, where the Supreme Court had issued a verdict saying, irrespective of the gender, people will be allowed inside the temple. So that was a primary controversy, which may spark off again later this year when the pilgrimage opens.
Okay, thanks, Bhargav. And Carol, obviously the nature of the elections or the results on the midterm senatorial elections in Philippines were very interesting. How do you think that's going to impact the Philippines and, of course, Duterte's authority? And what changes can we see to how Philippines is governed, how the parliament is functioning, and what Duterte intends to do? Interested to hear your comments.
The dominance of the pro-administration senators means that at the Senate and Parliament level, or Congress level, the Duterte government has further consolidated its political stakes. Now, this seems to be backed up further by very rosy economic data recently. So very recently, the Standard & Poor's even gave the Philippines a new credit rating upgrade. So with a higher credit rating, it is expected that the Philippines will be able to have access to more financing. So with more finances, this could fund much of the Duterte administration's ambitious build infrastructure projects. So there are a lot of FDI investment prospects in that segment of the national economy. The dominance of the pro-administration legislators means that this could give a boost to the Duterte administration's legislative agenda initiatives. At least two of them are very sensitive. It has to do with the return of the death penalty, which was banned several years ago by the Arroyo administration. And now some senators are seeking its return. Now, we don't know how well it will be received by the Senate, because assuming that the senators still maintain some kind of independence, even if they are allies of the Duterte administration, sometimes they are known to give in to public opinion. So if they will play to the gallery, the death penalty initiative of the Duterte administration may still not face smooth sailing, just like his controversial push for federalism. we have always been a presidential system, and switching to a federal form of government has always been in Congress for debates, but it never pushed through. So that particular agenda can still face some challenges, but let's just say that with more senators now aligning with the president, there will be less what do you call this? Less violent opposition to the measure. Perhaps the opposition would be less active. That's all. Thank you.
Carol, if I may ask, do you think the push for federal form of government runs contrary to the popular image of Duterte as an authoritarian? Usually, federal form of government is seen as an affront to authoritarian rulers. What do you think?
Well, the president keeps saying that he is not seeking an extension of his term, but that's what he's saying publicly. But then some people are worried that he seems to be positioning his daughter for the presidency. So whether we stay as a presidential system or a federal form of government, we still get to retain, I think, the post of the president, but it's just on ministerial or some kind of just a figurehead. But even with Duterte's daughter acting as a figurehead, it still holds sway, right? And in the and Congress can elect a prime minister that is aligned with the president, or it's Duterte himself who will become the prime minister, something like that. So we really don't know at this point. There could be there is a lot of push and pull in the Duterte circles. Some would like him to stay. Maybe personally the president doesn't want to, but he also wants to ensure that he retains some kind of political control over the situation, because he has to defend himself against a potential backlash by his political enemies. So the best way to ensure that he can insulate himself from vengeful political foes is to keep his clout alive in the political scene, whether this is directly or behind the scenes.
Okay, very interesting.
I don't know if I answered your question.
Paul, if I may raise one more question. Carol, can you please clarify what exactly do they refer to by saying federal form of government? Theoretically speaking, when you say federal, it basically means devolution of centralized power into regional territories or provinces with an arrangement of dual government, one at the federal level and another at the provincial level, very similar to India or the US especially, because they retain a president while being federal. So can you please clarify what do they mean by federal form of government?
At this point, very little has been revealed about the details of the plan. I think it's still being drafted at this point. But when you say, but I think the general idea is, yes, devolution of more powers to the local governments. Maybe some streamlining will be done. Some provinces will be absorbed under a certain region. So when you talk about federalism, that means they have the local governments, the federal states will have the most say on very important state matters such as defense, how taxes are going to be distributed or collected, things like that. But really, the details have yet to be finalized. So that's something that we are waiting for the legislators to make further revelations about the details.
Okay, Carol, thanks very much, Bhargav. Good question. Let's flip to Thailand. I think across Asia, what was very clear is the clear victories in India, clear victory in Australia, which was indeed unpredictable, but took a minority government into a majority government position. Indonesia was a clear win by Jokowi, and it really did strongly repel the new order and its influence in Indonesia. It's taken 20 years and 5 elections in Indonesia, but finally we're rid of the old guard, which haven't seen an extremely obvious trend line. I think the most unpredictable situation we're facing leading into the 22nd May announcements is indeed in Thailand. We've got a very interesting situation there where we didn't so much as have a coup, but as a necessary military intervention because of the dysfunctional and unethical levels of government, where governments elected into power under Thaksin were helping themselves to the state coffers. We now have a situation where the constitution has changed. We have a series of new parties. We've got the military government's own party, Palang Pracharat, winning the popular vote and getting second in the party vote. We've got former Thaksin still behind the scenes setting up another party, and we've got the Democrats fundamentally losing power, changing leadership. We've got the emergence of the Future Forward Party under Thanathorn Juangroongruangkit, where he's actually a billionaire child of a car distribution business. We've got Abhisit Vijaya, a long-term political leader and leader of the Democrats, being replaced by Julian Langsanawisit. So we've certainly got some interesting dynamics, but the election result in terms of who's going to be in the Senate is very clear because that's mandated. However, we're now about to see a coalition form, and whether that is pro-Putai, pro-Thaksin, or whether it's pro-Palang Pracharat party, that's the bit that we're unclear about, of course. So I'd be interested to hear initially, Bhargav, if you could just overview, the seats of Parliament and the rough numbers before the three of us, Carol Librojo and Manila, myself and yourself, discuss what are the potential permutations of which way this coalition is going to form. Thank you.
Sure, Paul. So of all the parties, Putai has won the most number of seats with 136, while the most number of votes, the popular votes, has been won by Palang Pracharat Party with Prayut Chan-o-cha as their prime ministerial candidate. And Thanathorn comes in third with his Future Forward Party winning 80 seats, while the two other parties, which may turn out to be kingmakers, Democrat Party with 52 seats with over 3 million popular votes, while Bum Jai Thai Party also has won 51 seats with more than 3 million popular votes. So Democrats and Bum Jai Thai have made the intent very clear to form an alliance with each other to support either a camp led by Palang Pracharat Party or an anti-military camp led by Putai Party. While Thanathorn, interestingly, has played on both sides. He wants to be a prime minister, according to some of his statements, while at the same time, initially, he had made it clear that they may support an alliance led by Putai. So he is playing a joker while uh, Democrats and Bumjai Thai Party combined may turn out to be the kingmakers in the lower house. Uh, this uh, considering Senate is likely to support the Palang Pracharat Party.
Okay, very interesting, Bhargav. We've seen an emergence of politicians, new people, new key players. Obviously, Jurin and Thanathorn. But who will become the Prime Minister is of interest, but kind of beyond speculation at this point. It could be Prayut. It could be a new figure to take some pressure off Prayut and get the focus off him. But more interestingly is how the coalition's going to form. Obviously, the Democrats and the Bumjai Thai Party play a key role in that. They can create a government coalition by which way they go. Obviously, there's a history in Thailand of people, even within a party, changing to another party to make sure that they are closer to the power base. Traditionally, Thais call it the Cobra, where they change to join the powerful group rather than stick by any ideologies but be away from power, because much of the Thai politicians historically in Thailand have been motivated not by using power to assist the country's advancement, but rather to help line their already quite significantly lined pockets. Bhargav, do you have any? In fact, let me pop it on you, Carol. Do you at this stage get a sense for which way it's going to go, likely to go, or is it impossible to predict, Carol?
Well, as I see it, the situation right now is pointing towards neither blocks being able to form the majority. Even if the Democrats and the Bumjai Thai eventually links up with the PPRP or the Palang Pracharat, they might still be a few seats short of the majority. But what I'm thinking is that the election commission might ultimately rule on the issue and give the PPRP the mandate to form the government on the basis that it secured the most number of popular votes. Now, I'm not sure if that is very clear in the Constitution. If not, then it will be a subject of dispute again by the few Thai bloc. But as soon as the election commission rules on it, it might seek the endorsement of the court again to legitimize its nomination of the Palang Pracharat as the bloc that has the mandate to form the government. Now, as soon as PPRP forms the government, what we have are two opposing blocs that are almost equally strong. So even if PPRP forms the government, it is confronted by a very strong, very formidable opposition. The few Thai here, well, I don't know, it seems impossible for the few Thai bloc to nominate a PM because the Senate will surely not side with it. But PPRP, even with only 136 plus 250 from the Senate, can nominate their prime minister. So the prospect that it can nominate the PM is almost something that is already a foregone conclusion. So the remaining the remaining question is who is going to form the government. But like I said, I think the election commission, with backing from the Supreme Court or probably even the monarchy, would declare the PPRP as the party with as the bloc with the mandate to form the government based on the fact that it secured the most number of popular votes.
That's a very interesting take, Carol, and let's see how it unfolds later this week. Bhargav, did you have any things you wish to add to that or queries?
I do agree that if a government formed by Palang Pracharath with Prayuth as its prime minister is likely to face a very formidable opposition in the lower house. At the same time, that's precisely why Bumjai Thai and the Democrats are likely to become kingmakers, because they will add to the prowess of the Palang Pracharath party in the lower house to counter the offensive by the Pheu Thai party. And even if Pheu Thai party actually takes the matter to the constitutional court, in most cases, in most legal opinions, they made it very clear under the Constitution of 2017, the Senate will play a role in electing the Prime Minister, hence the government as well. So out of there are 500 members in the lower house and 250 in the upper house, that is the Senate, and combined they formed a college, an electoral college of 750 members. So out of that, any party will require more than 375 seats to form a government, and Palang Pracharath party has 115 seats in the lower house, and they require only 10 or 20 more at the max. So even if a couple of small parties join them, they will be able to form a government with the help of the Senate. To counter the strong offensive by the opposition, led by Pheu Thai and Thanathorn's Future Forward Party, if the Democrat and Bumjai Thai party join them, they'll have a very strong government able to face the opposition. And at the same time, Senate also has veto over the legislative process, at least for the first 5 years of transitionary period as defined by the Constitution of 2017. To that extent, I assess that it's very likely we will see a formidable government led by Palang Pracharath Party's Prayuth Chan-o-cha as the Prime Minister.
Can I add something to that, Bhargav?
Please, Carol.
Yeah, there's also a chance that in the early stage of the transition, let's assume that the PPRP succeeds in forming the government in parliament. The first few months will be very tricky because it's like I said, it's confronted by a strong opposition. But eventually, if it becomes the ruling coalition in parliament, there is a chance that some MPs from the Pheu Thai could turn turncoats, could switch to the Palang Pracharath party for political benefit. That's possible. So, and also for as long as the PPRP delivers, then it can stay popular in the public. So if it stays popular in the public and also the Prime Minister, then there's a chance that its clout in parliament and in society will further expand. So eventually, there could be stability in parliament. But it's stability that in terms of being able to legislate laws, yes, but no dramatic reforms are expected on the more sensitive issues like the expansion of democratic reforms, such as sparing or cutting or reducing the powers of the military and bringing back civilian authority in government. Those things will remain in the back burner. It's something that the Pheu Thai bloc will likely harp on from time to time just to destabilize government. But we do not expect that to to prosper at all in the near future or in the medium term future. So eventually, I think as soon as the PPRP forms the coalition, forms the government, we expect a chaotic first 3 or 4 months, and then after 4 months, as long as the PPRP delivers and the PM Prayut, assuming that it's going to be Prayut, will remain popular, I think eventually the water will seek its own level. There will be equilibrium somewhere about 3 or 4 months from there.
Okay, Carol, thanks very much. So it's going to be an interesting week in politics, the coming months, both in Indonesia and Thailand in particular, but also India and Philippines are going to be very interesting to see how these governments focus on improving infrastructure. I think in closing comment from myself, we need to be very cognizant that the current government and the machinations occurring in Thailand are indeed because by reducing the military's take on politics and its influence, and indeed the monarchy's overriding position in Thailand, it would be particularly destructive to the country given the history of all things Thaksin and all things Puthai and all its pre-incarnations in its recent names such as Pheu Thai Party always ended in management for self and theft, whilst sending out a philanthropic message that they were wonderfully empathetic. Grossly mass-scale theft of national assets would indicate that there are power motivations and money motivations that make a transition to a more advanced democracy a little bit ludicrous at this stage. And as sad as that is from a purely technical perspective, that's the reality on the ground. Bhargav, do you have any closing comments you would like to make?
Yes, Paul. In India, especially after the opinion polls, post-election opinion polls have come out, it is very likely that we will have an outcome very similar to, or if not similar, very close to what the opinion polls say after the seventh phase of the elections. So I wouldn't expect a major shift in policy or security paradigm, except in a few states in the north and the northeast. And in Bengal and a few other states, there could be a few political clashes, as seen during the elections from April 11th till yesterday. There have been continued political clashes and violence happening in states like Kerala, West Bengal, especially West Bengal. Kerala has been lower than expected, but in West Bengal, we can see similar violence taking place in few tens places in rural parts of the state, in northern parts of West Bengal. Calcutta, the major city in the eastern part of India, is likely to remain calm with heavy presence of the central paramilitary forces and state police. Over to you, Paul.
Yes, look, Bhargav, thanks for that outline. I think it's a very fascinating part of Asia Pacific's history emerging with the announcements of elections, particularly this week, but also as the Indian results become formalised. We've had the shock result that went against polls in Australia, some fascinating times ahead. Well, that's a quick overview from our most senior analyst at APAC Assistance. That's Bhargav Reddy, based in Bangalore, India, and Carol Librojo, based in Manila, the Philippines. Myself, Paul Quaglia, based in Singapore. If you wish to get in contact with us, you can get us via email at info@apacassistance.com. That's APAC, the abbreviation of Asia Pacific, apacassistance.com. Carol and Bhargav, no need to do another verbal sign-off. Thanks very much for your time today, and let's get this issued along the normal channels so our listeners and clients can enjoy your wisdoms. Thank you very much, and I'm closing this call off now. Thank you.